Good morning, everybody. For those that don't know me, I'm Carol Jordan. I'm a member of the Rotary Club of Roundend, and I'm the District International Chair. Habib is president of Beirut Cosmopolitan, and we're really confident that we could use this opportunity and build a sustainable link with Beirut. Welcome, Habib. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Carol. I'd like to share a little bit of background as well to Lebanon. As you may know, Lebanon and Beirut are going through some very, very difficult times at the moment, which unfortunately camouflage a very long history. So hopefully I can share a part of that with you and lead up to the events of the explosion on the 4th of August and what we're doing thereafter. So to give it some geographical context, we're effectively southeast of the UK, approximately 3,500 kilometers from London. If we zoom in, we're at the far end of the Mediterranean. We're nestled in, if you can see my cursor, between Syria to the east and north and the Israel-Palestine situation to the south. If we go back a little bit in history, effectively the first settlements started in this part of the world and around about 9,000 BC. So you can see it's quite rich from that point of view. Being at the crossroad of three continents, Europe, Asia, and Africa, we've had a lot of friends visit us. It's been, in a way, a double-edged sword. We've been occupied, but we've also been privileged from the sharing of culture and ideas. So you can see the list of empires that occupied Lebanon to the present day. It was carved up, and due to the historical ties between that administrative region in Mount Lebanon and the French, basically support was given for the creation of the greater state, the state of Greater Lebanon. And that basically was established on the 1st of September 1920. Of course, 100 years later, the 1st of September 2020, we were supposed to be celebrating our 100-year anniversary. And of course, the situation in the country at the moment is quite dire. There was no celebration. Lebanon established its independence from France in 1943 and experienced its golden years between the mid-50s and mid-70s, where it was the center of the Middle East. It was a major hub for banking, commerce, tourism, education, and it was the gateway from the West to the Middle East. A bit of geography for you. Some people tend to think that being in this part of the world, it's all desert. Lebanon is the only country in the Middle East which does not have a desert. We have a mountain peak of 3,000 meters. We do have snow in winter and a ski season. And in fact, we just had the last few days, we've had a very strong snowfall. This is where it gets interesting. We have 18 different religious sects in the country. Of primary note, we have the Maronite Christians, the Sunni Muslims, and the Shiite Muslims. Amongst others, we have Druze, Greek Orthodox, Greek Armenian, and the list goes on and on and on. This is where it gets even more interesting. In Lebanon, we do not have a separation of church and state. So religion and politics are very much intertwined. And what we do have is a confessional political system, which means that political power is shared along sectarian lines. So the president is always a Christian Maronite, the prime minister is always a Sunni Muslim, and the head of parliament is always a Shiite Muslim. In addition to that, we have 128 seats in parliament that are equally divided between Christians and Muslims. The capital of Lebanon is Beirut, as you probably know, and historically it was actually known as the mother of laws. It reached its peak between the period 200 AD and 500 AD. So from being the centerpiece for law dating back to antiquity, we have unfortunately strayed very much away from that honorable position with the rampant corruption that currently inflicts the country. So let's now lead up to the present day events. As you may know, we've had a civil war from 1975 until 1990, 15-year civil war, which devastated the country. And in fact, Lebanon became a theater for all proxy wars in the region and indeed globally between the superpowers, given that the Cold War was playing out. Since the end of the civil war and supposedly the peace agreement in 1990, we've had 30 years of political dysfunction, political bickering, clientelism, and at the same time, we're also entangled politically. In the Middle East, you may know, there are two major regional political axes: the Saudi axis, which is basically supported by America and more recently Israel, and the Iranian axis, which has close ties with Syria, Russia, and to a lesser degree, China. So these two axes have a major influence on Lebanon, given the fact that we have the large number of sectarian groups in the country. So when the region is stable, we benefit from it. When there's problems in the region, then it spills over into Lebanon. As part of the deteriorating state, we have no regular electricity, and basic services are basically at the lowest they've been in the country. To top that off, we had a revolution which started on the 17th of October 2019. The population could no longer deal with the deteriorating situation. We have economic and financial meltdown. To make matters worse, COVID or Corona entered our shores in March of 2020, and we were in lockdown for a long period of time with temporary respites. And in fact, right now, we're living the most severe form of lockdown in the country, where you need to get authorization from the government via an application to actually go outside your house or apartment. To make matters even worse, we have the largest number of refugees per capita anywhere in the world, which is adding enormous pressure to an already broken system. And then, of course, on the 4th of August, we had this enormous explosion that rocked the foundations of the city.
At 6 p.m. local time on Tuesday, the 4th of August, an explosion ripped through Beirut's port. People in Lebanon's capital had earlier spotted a large fire at the port, billowing dark smoke into the air. There were reports that a warehouse containing fireworks had caught fire. And several videos of the scene showed coloured flashes in the flames. Videos from the scene suggest there was one smaller explosion. And then roughly 30 seconds later, this enormous shock. The blast struck with the force of a 3.5 magnitude earthquake. This was the aftermath. Windows shattered in buildings across the city and damaged cars on the roads near the port. This is where the explosion happened. 4 kilometers away, in the St. Mar Meroun church, a priest and his congregation were taking part in mass. Aerial shots show the scale of the destruction of the port. It reportedly housed 85% of Lebanon's supply of grain, which was a strategic food reserve in a country crippled by economic meltdown. You can see the impact on the Beirut port silos building before and after the explosion. Surrounding the silos were corrugated iron and steel structures that have mostly been destroyed. These satellite images reveal the extent of the damage. This crater was once a warehouse. Now it's underwater.
So effectively, the epicenter of the explosion at the port of Beirut had an impact on the entire city of Beirut. And it's not an exaggeration to say there was practically no building that was left unaffected by the explosion, from major destruction to walls collapsing, to shattered windows, glass windows and doors. The ammonium nitrate was actually stored on this hangar that the video referred to. And of course, the crater was left behind from that epicenter point. It's considered to be the largest non-nuclear explosion in history, and perhaps the third largest explosion overall behind Hiroshima and Nagasaki. 200 people were killed, 6,000 wounded, and still suffering from their wounds and scarred for life. 300,000 displaced, 10 to 15 billion dollars of damage, US dollars of damage. So as a club, Beirut Cosmopolitan, we acted immediately. We looked at what needed to be done in terms of immediate relief and also long-term effort. Immediate relief was in the form of medical supplies, PPE equipment because of the corona situation, food and shelter, and cleanup. And here our Rotaractors and Interactors played a very important role. They were some of the first responders on the ground to help in the aftermath of the explosion. In terms of the long-term effort, we focused on the key ideas of repairs and reconstruction, and we'll talk about the hospital in a minute. Psychological and trauma support, that's spearheaded by our club secretary, who's a psychologist. And we also wanted to play our part with regards to the environment in terms of collecting recyclable material. Here are some examples of the initiatives that we did. We paired up with a Scottish NGO called Edinburgh Direct Aid to help homes that were impacted by the blast to seal off windows and doors before winter set in. We helped with our Rotaract Interact Club distribute food to the areas affected by the blast. And just to point out here, the situation in the country is so dire at the moment that we have more than 50% of the population below the poverty line. That's not an exaggeration. It's probably even more than that by now. The hospital that we're basically collaborating with for the global grant, we also worked on a global grant to give them ventilators to assist with the current corona crisis. And just to highlight that this hospital is the only public hospital in Beirut, which is important to point out because in Lebanon at the moment, if you want to access private hospitals, we do not have a national healthcare system. So it becomes near to impossible unless you have health insurance. So when the situation becomes so dire from a poverty point of view, public hospitals, the only one in Beirut, takes on more and more of an important role. The repairs and construction, as I mentioned, we're going to be focusing on assisting in the rehabilitation of the Karantina Public Hospital, which, by the way, was only 900 meters away from the epicenter of the explosion. So you can imagine the impact on that hospital if the explosion was felt as far away as 20 kilometers. So we're going to be assisting with the pediatric and neonatal operating theater and the ward. Our objective is $400,000. We've now reached about $350,000 in funds.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Habib. I've heard that talk a number of times, and you know, it never ceases to just strike me in terms of the significant need that there is there. But there is a real need in Beirut, and we are confident that because we can work directly with you and the Rotary Club, there is a confidence there that our money would be well spent and be going to a very worthwhile cause. Our proposal is that we actually help to raise funds to go towards finishing off the global grant. Now, we recognise that there's significant speed needed in this. We've talked to the foundation committee, and we've looked at if we could raise some money in our district, it'd be look favourable to match fund. So what we propose is that we go out for appeal. Paul's already set up the link so that you can actually pay it straight into the district account, and then we can pay it straight to either to Habib and Beirut Cosmopolitan, or we can go through the Rotary Club of Putney, who've also started an appeal in this country.
Because of this incident, Rotary globally has shown its true strength. We have received overwhelming support from clubs around the entire globe. We've received calls and donations from North America, from South America, from Australia, New Zealand, Europe. The UK has been an enormous pillar of support for this project and other projects. So it just speaks volumes to the value of this organization and to the trust that we have with each other, and the fact that we all subscribe to a set of values as highlighted by Nikki. And that basically means that we all speak the same language, a common language.